book. I mean, it's a minor detail.
So I would love to know how you go about writing your spicy scene.
Which world would you want to be a part of the most?
Welcome to this entry of the Bookish Diaries. Today we have the incredible Maggie Arnold joining us. Maggie started writing in 2020 and published her first book in 2023. She lives in the north of England and with her husband, who tolerates her craziness. Maggie loves a happily ever after and hopes one day to make this her full-time occupation. How about that? So Maggie, what started your career in writing in 2020?
Do you know what? And I suspect there'll be a lot of people that say this. I think it was to stop me going crazy in the pandemic.
Yeah,
I don't know what it was like where you live, but we weren't allowed out of the house. We were allowed out for 1 hour a day, of which we could go for a walk. And all of the times we were supposed to be staying in the house and, not seeing people, not communicating. I think it was really hard. It was such a hard time. And I think it was just kind of like that outlet that I needed to channel some of the things that, I needed that I guess I was missing out on in life. But yeah, so that was what it was really, I think. I mean, I'd always dreamed when I was kind of, I guess, a kid of writing a book. But you always think, my God, that's such a big thing. That's such a big deal. And I just, one day I just started and I just couldn't stop. And it's just been a bit bonkers, really.
that's amazing. So, was there a couple different things that you tried as an outlet, or when you realized that you needed to do something, were you just automatically like, I'm going to do writing? Or did you dabble with a couple other things?
No, I think it was probably just the writing. I mean, there were other things going on at the time. I'm quite a practical person. And as you've just alluded to, I've got a husband, I've got a family. So that we were doing things with the children to try and keep them occupied as well, to try and kind of distract them away from all the terrible things that were happening. So we were doing extra things in the house, like we were cooking, and crazily I was teaching them how to use every household appliance that we had so that they could be a fully formed adult. This is how the washing machine works. And I was trying to kind of keep picture diaries of things as well, because I figured that when they grew up and they were 40, 50, 60 and they had children and grandchildren of their own, they'd be like, oh my God, grandma, tell me about the pandemic. So we've got picture books of the things that they were doing each day and things like that, and crazy things. So I was looking for somewhere to channel some of my energy, and I was doing those things, but in that kind of quiet time that you had to yourself. That's when I started the writing, and Helen will know because she's read the first thing that I've not published it yet. The very first thing that I wrote, and it was a single book. And when I wrote it, I was like, oh, I'm not entirely sure that's finished. And then I sat down and I wrote the second book and the third book, and all those three books came really, really quickly. And then I thought, right, that's it. I've got it out of my system. We're all done. And then there's that nagging thought in the back of your mind. I wonder if I could do this again. I wonder if that was a fluke. And that's when I wrote, what did I write after that? It's Always You. Because I thought, well, let's try a different set of characters in a different situation and see if I can create a book out of that. And that's when I wrote It's Always You, and I've released that one. And that was always intended to be a standalone book. And I had a couple of people that came to me and said, so there's a side character in the book called Jane. She's not the main character. She's the main character's best friend. And had a number of people said, well, so what happened to Jane? And I'm like, well, nothing happened to Jane. It's a standalone book. It's, whatever happened in the story. And I was thinking about it and thinking about it. And then one day I was just like, do you know what? I know what happens to Jane. I've got it. And then I sat down and I wrote the second book. And as soon as I'd written the second book, I needed to write a third book. And that's where we are now. We're at the, where are we now? We're at the beginning of March, aren't we? So on 28th of March, that's when In a Different League comes out. And I made the apartment block in the series the link between the books. So rather than it being a set of brothers or a set of cousins, and it being that it's the actual apartment block and the people that live in the apartment block that is the link between. And the actually, I guess that there is a, I don't know if anybody's following it, my Instagram, but there is somebody, one of my Instagram friends, a similar thing happened. One day I was kind of, Kate, before I got to you, I was kind of having it really in a different, relatively quickly, because obviously I've got to juggle it between living and life and trying to work to earn some money as well at the same time. And I'd written it quite quickly. And I was like, oh my God, it's just, you kind of go through these phases. If this is any good. Anyway, I was talking to one of my Instagram friends, and I was like, how much time have you got at the moment? And she was like, I'm okay. I've got some time. What were we thinking? I was like, could you have a quick look at this? So she read In a Different League for me. And she went, yep, love it, love it, love it, love it. Every time she reads something of mine, she's so kind. She's like, it's my favourite. Every time, it's my favourite now. It's like, okay. But then she was like, there's a side character in it called Matty. And she's like, what happened to Matty in the book? And again, I was just like, what do you mean what happened to Matty in the book? It's not about Matty. She said, yeah, but I'm really invested in him. What happened to him? So then I was like, and I was supposed to be starting something else. I'd promised myself I was going to start something different. And I was like, no, I'm going to have to write a quick. So I think it's probably 12,000 words. It's a really kind of short story on what happens to Matty. So, see you later. Eldest child's going out. There's no privacy in this house at all. So there's 12,000 words knocking around on what happens to Matty, and I'm going to bring it out, I don't know, a week after the main book, just in case. But I'm only going to do an ebook of that, just in case anybody's interested. But yeah, it was just kind of like a little bit of a stopgap of, because I was like, I know he's going to live happily ever after, but
Sure.
but everyone else can know now if they really want to. But there'll be a tiny little follow-on for that one. But also, what it's done is, because I can't help myself of creating extra people, it would appear, there's potentially a book 4 now, because I wrote because I've introduced another character, and I was like, oh, that would be she'd be good. So I was like, okay, so yeah. So there's potential. I was going to go off and do something different, but now I'm kind of like, oh, there's potentially a 4th book in it. But yeah, so it's, can't help myself, it would appear. All the craziness happens.
But why romance?
I've always loved romance. I've always loved romance. And I think I don't know what it is. I think sometimes it's like, on television, there's obviously there's so much, isn't there? There's so much there. And it's almost like the news. I try and avoid the news a little bit to a certain extent, because there's so many bad things happening in the world. And I know, and we all know, there are so many bad things happening in the world, and every day you can turn it on and there's something. So it's that little bit of holding on to that little bit of something that's good, that makes you kind of feel a little bit warm inside, that makes you feel there might be something good happening, because we all know what life's like, and in our own lives as well, it's quite challenging. That it's quite nice to get that warm fuzzy feeling, the feeling that actually some things can go right, and that there are happy endings there. So yeah, it just makes me feel kind of warm inside. But Helen, you're a recent convert to it, aren't you?
I am.
Romance.
I was gonna say, I actually had to think.
Helen, we can't hear you.
Yeah, we can't hear you at all.
No.
Still can't hear me? Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. The thing keeps going down for some reason. I don't know what's happening there. Sorry. I was saying I had to thank Kate for pointing you in my direction and then pointing me in your direction, because I truly, I've read the first books that someone has not published yet, and I'm not going to name names because I don't want to point fingers or anything. But if I was pointing fingers, starts with an M and ends with an Arnold, just saying. And I was truly flabbergasted at just how much I was in love with this story. And then Maggie told me that there were 2 more books and she wanted me to read those as well. I damn near lost it. I was so excited and so invested. And I'm going through and I'm supposed to be just proofreading, editing, jotting things down here and there. And I couldn't help in between going, is this going to happen? Why is he doing this? What? I had all these little notes going down the side, and I felt really bad when I realized just how much I'd put down, and I can't help but respond to the story. And I'm not a romance reader. I don't like romance books. I never have. I found them predictable and mostly boring, and I didn't connect with them very well. But then, you actually fall in love with somebody and you have someone in your life, and all of a sudden, love does not seem so bad. And I remember reading her first book, and I was truly blown away at just how attracted to each character I was, which is why it's funny about the Apartment series when you're saying that the side characters keep getting picked up by people. Because even your side characters, in anything I've read that you have written, even the side characters that aren't supposed to be main characters, they're not supposed to draw your attention too much, you get drawn in and you want to know what they're doing and you're wondering what they're doing off page. And I think the way that you write is so captivating and it's so interesting. And it really does it holds you. Usually, you read a book, especially certain genres, and you have moments or certain chapters that kind of grab you, and then you're not as captivated for a few chapters, and then something grabs you again. Whereas when I'm reading something that you have written, I find I'm captivated from beginning to end. I haven't read anything from you, and the first chapter hasn't just completely gotten my attention. Absolutely love the books. And the Apartment series is great. I can't wait to have them all just on my shelf, on display. And I'm really, really excited for the first ones to be printed and published and for other people to be as obsessed as I am.
Well, hopefully I'm not too far away on that. But before I guess I can probably talk a little bit more about that. Helen, as a I was going to say author. That always feels a really, really strange thing for me to say about myself, but I love it. I was honestly, when you with the little notes, and sometimes she'd send me like a voice note and things like that. It's just the nicest feeling, because sometimes I think I'm funny, but nobody else does. So it's quite nice when she's kind of picking things out, or she's like, "Oh my God, what's he doing now?" Or whatever the crazy things. It's so nice to kind of get a little bit of feedback, to think that it's not just all in my own head, or that actually somebody else can relate to this too. Because for me, with the characters, they've got to be real to me as well, else otherwise it doesn't make any sense. I'm not, they're not there just to fill a bit of page. They're actually real. So yeah, it's got to be real to me. And and this is the thing, it's got to live in my head for a while, and by the time you kind of get to the end of the book, they're real people, that you're actually saying goodbye to real people when you've written the end on something. And maybe that's why I'm such a pushover when somebody says, what happens, what happened to this guy, what happened to that guy. And Helen had said to me about the one that we're talking about. So the one that we're talking about, the first one's called You Saved Me. and it's about this woman, Faith. And she's quite young. She's kind of left university. She's got her first job. She's living with her sister, which is a bit of a drama. She hates her job. She's trying not to say she hates her job, but she's not loving it. She's in a relationship with this guy that it's been going on for a while, and it's not the fairy tale she thought it was going to be. And she's trying to figure out how to get out of it, or whether she should get out of it or not. Anyway, there's a couple of things that happen that kind of, it all blows up in her face. And it's over a job that she gets offered, essentially. And she goes off to work in what she describes as Downton Abbey's sister house. And that's where really everything starts to happen for her. And she's just absolutely blown away by the experiences that she goes through when she lives in the house, and she's working for a new employer, and the staff there, and bits and pieces, and it all kind of grows from there. But yeah, it's it was a fun thing to write. I did write it quite quickly. But I think sometimes that's the best way. I think sometimes you can overthink things. So yeah. But yeah, no, I really, really enjoyed it. But it was something that I'd offered to a publisher to publish, and I'm stuck in the loop of it takes forever, doesn't it? And somebody told me that these things do take a while. But in the interim, I'd started this self-publishing journey, which was a bit tricky, if I'm honest, and I did screw myself over a number of times trying to figure out how to do stuff. But I think I found out how to do it now. I seem to be, and actually it was Helen that helped me figure out the book thing, because I was like, no, not publishing a book. It's going to be ebook all the way, because that's the easiest thing to do. But we eventually figured out how to actually get a book out. So I'm very grateful to Helen for giving me a little bit of encouragement to stick with that, because that was quite hard. Kept getting rejected.
This is one of the prettiest books I have.
Right.
It's just, I love the size. The cover is just stunning. I mean, Jane is probably my favorite character that you've written. And so, yeah, I'm so glad that this is in my hands right now. It's so good.
Yeah, and this is the thing, it's trial and error when you're meeting people on the internet of who to trust with, whether it's editing your book or whether it's creating a cover for you. Yeah, it's been the community though is great, isn't it? If you find some fabulous people,
Yeah.
And I mostly hang out on Instagram. That's kind of, I guess, my main platform. Occasionally I publish things to TikTok. I really don't understand TikTok, if truth be told. I think I'm probably a bit too old for TikTok, but I give it a go every now and again, and then I'm just scratching my head. I don't really understand it. I've discovered Threads recently as well, but that just seems a little bit more like a chatting community, which is fine, and that's quite nice. And I've found a few people recently on there. Oh, actually, I'll tell you a funny story. When I first joined, I met a lady called Anastasia. And she was looking for new indie authors to follow and be friends with, and I'm like, oh, can we be friends? And it was just at the time where Love Greek Style was coming out, and I said to her, I've got this Love Greek Style, it's out, and I'm looking for people to do an ARC read and do a review. And she went, oh, that sounds really interesting. I'm from Greece. And I went, oh my God, no. Because all of a sudden I'm like, oh no, have I represented something incorrectly, or have I said something wrong? Oh my God, this is going to be a disaster. Anyway, I sent her the copy so that she could have a read. And there's a point in the book. I mean, it's a minor detail where Jane has to ring. So it's and I say this on my socials. There's an accidental pregnancy in there, so it's not like a massive spoiler. But there's a point in the book where Jane has to ring her mother, or she wants to ring her mother to tell her that she's pregnant. And her mother and and father are in Australia. They're doing like a world tour. And the lady Anastasia that I'd met on Thread, she was like, "Oh my God," she said, "I'm Greek, but I live in Australia now. It's like you knew." And she was just so delightful. And I was so scared when she was reading the book of what she was going to come back with. But she helped me a little bit with my Greek, because obviously there's literally like a few the fewest Greek words in there that I could find, sort of thing. So she'd helped me a little bit with my Greek, and she was just lovely. She was absolutely lovely. There's actually on, I think it's Instagram, she does this post of there's the book in one corner, and then she's kind of singing a Greek song over the top of it, as well, which is just absolutely amazing and phenomenal. But yeah, it does make you, it honestly though, I was terrified at the time, because I thought, oh God, what if I was like, oh my God, I never gave it a thought, because I'd never want to offend anyone or say anything wrong. And I was just like, instantly, it's like, oh my God, if I done something wrong, or if I'd done something I shouldn't have done. But she was absolutely delightful. And she's going to read the new one for me as well. So she pinged me a couple of days ago to say she was just starting. So fingers crossed that she likes that. And my biggest worry about the new one, so the new one's called In a Different League, was the fact that it's football, but it's football as in English football. And I know I have a lot of people from America that follow me on Instagram. And I'm like, I'm not going to call it soccer. I'm English. I'm going to call it football. It's football. So I was really I always kind of put, whenever I'm posting on Instagram, I always put the little emoji of the actual soccer ball, just so that people know that it's English football as opposed to American football. Just so that there's no confusion, because otherwise people would be like, what's going on with this? It makes no sense. Yeah, so it's all craziness. But yeah, it's a lot of translation problems, isn't there, sometimes?
I would love to know how you go about writing your spicy scenes, because I think you write some of the best spice that I've read.
Yes.
And so is it like when you create your character, do you create are you more of a pantser or a planner in that? Like, how much of the character do you tell them this is how they're going to act, versus the characters like, this is who I am to you?
Yeah, so that's a tricky one, in that I there's an element of planning, and the different books I guess I've approached in a different way, depending on, I guess, what I'm doing at the time, because sometimes I haven't got time to plan everything out.
Okay.
And you know what characters are like? They do what they want, don't they? Sometimes you think you've got it, and then something happens and you're like, no, they can't kiss at this point, it feels too soon. They need to wait, they wouldn't, that's not their behavior pattern. But I think once I've kind of got past the first few chapters and I've got their profile in my mind of who they are and how they are, then that determines how quickly things move between them. Like, so let's talk about In a Different League. In A Different League, we've got Quinn, and he's arrogant, and he's a little bit of an arse at the beginning. He's dealing with a few things that he's got on his mind that obviously they get revealed as we go later into the book. And he's all about the kind of seize the moment and the passion. And he's very unapologetic about it as well. So once I've kind of got his character set, then in my mind, I'm just literally, as we go through, I'm playing him through in my mind as to what would he do in this situation. It's not a what would I do, it's what would he do. And they become, honestly, the characters become very real to me. So I kind of do it a little bit like that. There have been occasions where I've planned it out a little bit more, and sometimes you overthink it if you plan it too much. I don't go, right, I'm going to go so many chapters, then I'm going to have them come together, and that's when it's going to happen, and then I want another one in another 2 chapters and another 2 chapters. It doesn't work like that. And I honestly thought that In a Different League, because I'd done it as enemies to lovers, I thought, oh, is this one going to be quite dry? And then when I'd finished it and I looked back, I think it was probably more spicy than some of the other things where there'd been an insta attraction between both of the characters, which I thought was which I wasn't expecting, but that's kind of how it had turned out. But yeah, I'm probably a little bit more pantser than planner, if truth be told. But I do always have I've always got an idea of how it's going to start, and I always know how it's going to end because, spoiler alert, they're going to end up together in all of my books. There will always be some kind of a happy ending. But I'm going to take you on a few twists and turns before they get there, because life is not a straight line. Life is lots of twists and turns along the way. And sometimes, people have said to me, there's always a shock toward the end. And I don't intend there to be a shock, but sometimes I do like to add a little extra in just to kind of make it a little bit more interesting, because nothing's ever straightforward, is it?
So this episode will come out at the end of April. Will you have anything? Well, I guess you kind of talked about this a little bit, I think. But will you have anything in the works then? I know in Another League will have come out a month prior.
Yeah, so that one will come out 28th of March. And then I think it's the 4th of April. See, now you're testing my memory skills. Where this little offshoot to the story will come out. If anybody wants to see what happens to Matty, then that will be that'll be out a week later. I've randomly started in the interim, because you've always got to have something on the go, apparently. I've randomly started a Christmas book, or I'm setting it Christmas.
That
I
will be
know
fun.
it's March, isn't it? I'm just like, is that bonkers to do that now? But hey, I've started it. And I think I know where I'm going with it. I'm only probably about, I don't know, 10,000 words in. So I've got that. But in the interim, I'm also trying to prep the original book, You Saved Me, in the background as well, with the publisher, to see how that does. I'm really kind of interested to see how that works in terms of I guess in comparison to self-publishing, to publisher publishing, to see if I get kind of more reach with those guys, and then I'll kind of see where things go with that. But what else have I got? I do have, there is one, I'm dreadful for holding things back, aren't I? There is one more that I've got that I've held back as well, because it felt like it was quite a personal book to me. And I do need to at some point commit to putting that out as well. And that one's called The Cottage. And I was going to do it this year, but am I going to do it? Yeah, I'd like to. It's a little bit of a well, it makes me feel sad. It's about this woman, and she needs to sell her grandmother's house because her grandmother's passed away, and I wrote it at the time when my grandmother had passed away, so it kind of brings up those memories for me. And it's all kind of nice and cozy in the end, and it's all kind of quite sweet. But she ends up selling the house to a developer, and she thought that she was just selling the house to a guy that was going to live in it. But she turns up and he's like, right, I'm going to rip that wall out. I'm going to take this out. And she's just like, oh my God, no. So she hates him to start with. And to be fair, he's not all that fussed about her either, because he just sees her as getting in his way. But eventually they find some middle ground eventually, and obviously that turns into a blossoming romance in the end, and everything kind of works out quite nicely. So I do need to get myself organized with that as well, because I've probably had that about a year, if truth be told. Sat there and I pick it up and then I put it back down again, and then I pick it up and then I put it back down again. But yeah, I do need to commit to these things and get them organized. But it's, but also there's an element of, I don't want to confuse everybody by releasing too many things at the same time. So yeah, but I guess in the background, the only other thing is there was it last year? I don't know, I can't remember now. I think it might be November last year. I did Lift, Lodgings, Love, and I've just converted that into paperback. So I need to. It's sat in my KDP. I just need to pick a date to launch it, because I've got the. Should we do a quick? I'm going to pull it off my bookcase.
Yes.
I ordered the proof, so it is real. It is real, and it is there. So I just need to hit go on the release it thing. So it's got one of these kind of like, not for resale on the front, because I ordered one of those so I could just get a feel for, did it look okay? And I was like, yeah, I think that looks okay.
That looks beautiful.
So I can release that one as well, because that one's all beautifully edited and nicely done. Thank you so much, Kate. So yeah, it's just a case of hitting go on that. If that's the, oh my God, I'm giving it all away, aren't I now? It's all coming.
I'm so excited to have more of your books on my shelf. I'm gonna have like a happily ever after shelf featuring Maggie Arnold.
Yes, I think everybody should have a little bit of happily ever after in their life from time to time. But yeah, no, I love stuff like that. I really do. It just makes me feel nice. But yeah.
We've asked a few authors this question, and I'm curious as to what your answer would be. Of the books that you've written, published and unpublished, which world would you want to be a part of the most?
Ooh. Ooh, that's a tricky one. That's a tricky. It's almost like that. It almost feels like which is your favorite child. Do you know what I mean?
Well, because I was going to ask you who your favorite character was that you written, so kind of similar.
Yeah. Do you know what? There are bits, I genuinely think there are bits of me, or bits of my personality, or bits of my character in each of the books. Not necessarily in each of the female leads. Sometimes it might be a snarky response from one of the other characters, or an awkward moment. But I don't know whether it's the first one. I don't know whether it's the Faith and Ben story that I'd probably lean most towards. I think that one's probably always going to have kind of a special place with me. Yeah, I think it's probably that one, if truth be told. So that means I'm going to have to get it out a little bit quicker now, isn't it? So that everybody else can read it as well.
Now I need to know what it says.
But yeah.
You have to.
Yeah,
I will read anything that Maggie Arnold writes, but I think the Faith and Ben story will always be my favorite. And I think, like her, it will always just be so special to me. I'm dying to get my hands on those books.
Yeah, and I guess, yeah, and that's quite interesting, Helen, because that's not the first book of mine that you read, and yet you're back on the first one I wrote. So that's really cool. That is really cool. I'm so pleased you've said that. So yeah.
I'm excited to read that one, because my first book of yours was Lift, Lodgings, Love, which I loved, and then Love Greek Style, and then In a Different League. And I think Love Greek Style with Jane is still my favorite, but I think that's because I see a lot of myself in Jane.
Yeah, yeah, and other people have said that to me as well, about Jane, that they see, and to be fair, Jane is a lot. She's in the first book quite a bit as well, and I think that's probably why. So in the first book, the main character is called Annie Booth, and she's Jane's neighbour, and Jane's in it quite a lot. They're fierce best friends together. They're looking out for each other. Jane is unfortunately for Annie, Jane is literally giving her a massive, great big shove to go out and get started in the world. But Jane's got challenges of her own at that point. She's, she's had this intense kind of city job where she's had a little bit of a nervous breakdown, and as a result, she's terrified about going outside. So Jane befriends her one day, where she basically takes a package in for her, and she's like, yeah, but nobody lives across the hall. And then the kind old lady who lives downstairs is very like, well, the thing is, and then she obviously she gives her all the goss. She leaves her a note one day and says, look, if you need anything, let me know. And then gradually Jane eventually opens the door. They start become friends. Eventually Jane manages to cross the hall into Annie's apartment, and then that's it. Then they're friends. And then one day Jane comes home and she says, oh God, I met this guy in town today. And he had the nerve to ask for my number. And she was like, well, you must call him. And she was like, you must be joking. And then Annie finds out that if she tells Jane these kind of stories about what she's done, she can distract her enough to try and get her down the stairs and out the front door. And every day, they call it, well, every week they do this thing called Friday Challenge. And she tries to get her a little bit further outside the house to build her confidence so that she can eventually sort of start kind of re-entering the world again. So so that maybe I think she'd been on a date with Pete, the guy that had knocked her down in the street, and then she comes back and she's coaching her down the stairs. He did this, he said that, and things like that. And that's where kind of Jane was born. And by the end of the book, she's got a grip on her fears, because she's helping Annie out with something. I won't give away the what she's helping with, because that's kind of like a major plot point, but she's helping Annie out with something toward the end of the book, and she's completely kind of completely conquered it. I think there's always an element of it within her. But she's kind of back on track by the end of the book. And then that's where we see her at the beginning of Love Greek Style, is Annie's getting married, she's giving up her apartment. Jane's kind of like, no, you've got to stay. And she's like, no, I've got to move, and we'll find you a new person to, and that's where she meets Ethan Onassis, because he buys Annie's apartment. And in that first moment, she's gone and he's gone, but then she's like, no, I cannot. He's too young. He's 25. I'm 33. This is not going to happen. And she fights it for a while. She probably doesn't fight it for very long, if truth be told. And then all sorts of craziness happens. And obviously they go to Greece for the summer, which is pretty cool. I'd love to kind of take 6 weeks off or 8 weeks off and just pack up a suitcase. It would be amazing, wouldn't it?
Absolutely. So as we're wrapping up, would you mind sharing with us a few of your favorite self-published authors that you like to read?
Ooh, I'm a big fan of E.G. Varro. I don't know whether anybody follows E.G. She's got a new book. Actually, it was out on Friday. It was out 28th of February. I shouldn't say
Secrecy and Swooning.
28th of February. Secrecy and Swooning. So, and that was a follow-up to what was it? Hostility and Heartstrings. So love E.G. It was really great. And then also, was it this year or was it the end of last year? I met Constance Remillard, who does historical romance. and it was called The Fox in His Hen House. And I said I would read it, do a review, do a read through and a review, and I got it, and it was something like 120,000 words when I looked, and I was like, oh my god, am I going to have enough time? Because normally a romance book's 70,000-80,000 words, and this was something like 120. I thought, oh my god, this is going to take me forever. I'm so slow, and anyway, I literally finished it in 4 days. And that was like, and I'm, at this point, I've got work, I've got whatever's going on in the crazy house I live in, but I couldn't put it down. Loved it, absolutely loved it. So yeah, so you should honestly, we should all try new things. But I am a big fan of Bridgerton and all that kind of stuff as well. I know my stuff's contemporary romance, but I do love a little bit of historical romance as well in there. So yeah, so I'd highlight both those ladies as, if you like that kind of thing, then go for it. It's really good.
So, well, thank you so much for joining us, Maggie. It was such a pleasure to have you on the show today. For all of our listeners, please check out Maggie Arnold's books. She is on Kindle Unlimited, and you can get her books on Amazon as well. Is there anywhere else that we can find your books right now, Maggie?
No, Amazon, Kindle Unlimited, that's where I'm at. That's where I am. And obviously I'm hanging out on Instagram as well if anybody wants to come and say hi.
Yes, you should definitely follow her because she does some awesome videos and stuff as well. If you would please follow, like, and subscribe to our different channels on Spotify, YouTube, and Apple Podcasts, we would love it. Thank you so much for joining.